Yeah, I felt kind of quite down about that, but I kind of got it because, we all know these people, and we're like, I know how cynical they are.
All right, Stephen here with Louder, and here's a sentence I never thought I'd say. I'm at the Download Festival with Busted. Hey.
Hello.
I mean, can I just say, it's a sentence we never thought you'd say either.
Yeah, I know, right? How are you feeling about this evening?
Really good, man. We are headlining the Avalanche stage, which I am very excited about. Weather's a bit dodgy, but we're in a tent, so it doesn't make any difference to us.
It's good for us because it's pissing down, so more people might come to the tent.
Yeah, well, I don't think you need to worry about the weather. Ever since
I'm glad we're in a tent. It's on today.
Of all days,
Yeah.
But I think when you guys are announced, like Download have got a history of throwing curveballs at their fans occasionally, but you guys, it feels like this is the biggest sort of renaissance for a band, a sort of phoenix from the flames. Like, back in 2003, had you have been announced, I can imagine that would have been an incredibly controversial thing, but you seem to have been openly sort of welcomed in by the festival so far, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, we wouldn't have done it in 2003. Do you know what I mean? I think that the whole scene was completely different back then. A lot's changed in 20 years. I think that barriers, tribalism within music genres has dissipated largely because of streaming, and you've now got Ed Sheeran doing collaborations with Bring Me the Horizon, which again wouldn't have happened in 2003. So it felt like a good thing, and actually when we were announced, I was just kind of interested to see what the vibe was, and everyone was absolutely loving it, man. And so I think it should, fingers crossed, be a really fun show.
When you think back to that time, because obviously it felt like all of the things that rock fans have a problem with, they're kind of, they don't write their own songs, it's manufactured and blah, blah, blah. That was actually not true of you guys at all, right?
Yeah,
so back then, did you feel a sort of frustration? Because you look at it then, and Good Charlotte, Sum 41, those bands that were big at the time when you guys were around, they were getting accepted, and a lot of them were using outside writers and producers and stuff like. Yeah. How frustrating for you was that back in the day?
I feel like the entire landscape of pop music back then was very different. It was very manufactured, and 99.9% of the bands that were making pop music they had nothing to do with the actual making of the records. They were formed by like Simon Cowell and put out there. So I think when a band like Busted came along, it was sort of marketed to that audience. We were being marketed as a pop band rather than like Good Charlotte, I think came through more of the alternative rock scene. But I think that it was just people weren't used to a band in the pop sphere doing everything themselves, and I think that took a minute for people to grasp. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and also I don't know any bands that don't use producers. I mean, I'm sure there are bands that know how to produce their own music, but all the bands I listen to, you can see that someone else produced it. So that's like a new thing.
Did that hurt you guys? Because you are, we were just talking about Mr. Bungle before we started. So you guys obviously, that's the stuff you like, that's the stuff you probably grew up listening to. Was it a hurtful thing for you guys to be sort of shunned by other magazines that maybe, that were big at the time?
Like Metal Hammer.
Like Metal Hammer, yeah.
If I'm honest, yeah. It did. Like, I'd love to say that I was bigger than that and it didn't affect me, but it did. Like, I think the biggest thing for me was like people that I admired didn't like my band, which I found quite hard to take. Like, I go to certain rock shows and go to see certain bands who I loved, and I'd get some in the crowd or something. That really pissed me off. But I think the thing is, when Busted came out, we were kind of, when we first released music, we were quite surprised at the kind of positioning we were in. We were kind of like, when we were writing songs, we were kind of influenced by loads of different things, but we were kind of looking up to Blink and looking up to Green Day and all these kind of bands. And I think, so we were quite surprised at the positioning we were in. And I think, I felt kind of quite down about that, but I kind of got it. Because, we all know these people, and we're like, I know how cynical they are, and I'm like, I can kind of get it, but it did take a moment to kind of get over that shit.
And you know what's a really important thing is that, Busted's audience was quite young at the start, but what's cool is that Busted became a huge gateway into rock bands, and I know so many people that started listening to Busted. I mean, you look at bands like Neck Deep, they were hugely influenced by Busted at a young age, and then they've gone on, and now there's people listening, to Sleep Token or whatever that may have started when they were much younger listening to Busted. So I think it was a Busted bringing guitars into the mainstream, because at the time there wasn't really any in the pop sphere. I think did put a lot of kids onto guitars, which I'm immensely proud of.
And I think that we were always a pop band, but I think maybe with a rock spirit.
Was there a moment where you felt it changed?
Yeah, in 2016, like long after we'd broken up. So we broke up in 2005, and I think that decade, as I mentioned earlier, everything about the music industry changed, and it's such a positive thing now that you have all these different collaborations going on, and I just think that people don't see it the way they, it's the tribalism thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, that people are much less likely to just judge you because you're not part of a particular scene. So I felt like when we came back in 2016, and we made a record called Night Driver, which was kind of off the wall for Busted. It was like an 80s, inspired sort of electronic record, really. And then we sort of progressed and made another album after that was more, I guess, more in the vein of what we might have done had we been in more Good Charlotte's sort of realm to begin with. And I don't know, it's just seemed to have got to a place where, as I say, Busted are playing Download Festival and everyone's thinking, great. And that's a huge journey. Do you know what I mean? A huge shift.